Oh, we are live on YouTube, according to the tools. So yeah, thank you very much for coming back. I am Mark Lundgren. I am here with the lovely Dana, who you all should have met yesterday. And we just want to cover some of the questions that, one, we either didn't get to yesterday, even though it's actually good because you had about 15 minutes yesterday to answer some of the questions. So I know that we covered some of it. Outreach is one of those things that a lot of people, one, either forget about, because it's like, it's all about finding people, or they just like, they're like, oh, that's not a problem. I sent them an email, an email, and very few people go into detail. So I loved the session yesterday. I love that you were bringing data, but also, yeah, as you said, that you actually have a channel with all your engineers of, the best and the worst of what you get in terms of approach. So yeah, I love the session yesterday, Dana.
Thank you very much for your kind words. I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate that you dedicate your time on watching the webinar. So I really hope that you all enjoyed the session. And it's true, we still have some questions unanswered, and there are some questions which I think it will be important to speak in more detail, just because they are very interesting, they're important, and maybe other people might also find it relevant. So I believe we will just start our session.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there any specific ones you want to? I think the kind of top question we had yesterday in terms of upvotes is what to do with candidates whose profiles don't tell any details about them. How to individualize the outreach, which is always an interesting one.
Yeah, it's true. So I think that I don't know, I think at least half of the people do not really spend much time on filling in their profiles, just because they don't have enough time. They do not think that it's important and everything. And we still need to find them. We need to see those profiles and to reach out to those people, because they are real candidates, and they might be sometimes a really good fit. And the thing is that how to attract their attention, how to make them know that we spend some time on their profiles, on just trying to learn more about this person. And what if their profile on LinkedIn is a bit empty? So the thing is that it's very important to cross-reference. So I mean, is it all right if I sometimes will refer to Amazing Hiring just because?
Oh, look, I'm going to do the same. It's like,
yeah,
until a month ago, it's like, well, you could use this tool and you could use that tool. So very, open disclosure. I have been an advisor to Amazing Hiring for the last 2 years. Love the tool, using the tool. My wife uses the tool. And very much like from a contacting point of view, it's like, it's a cross-referencing. Whether you're paying for it or you just have the free plugin is still what we're talking about. So it doesn't, like, we're not just trying to get you to kind of, try Amazing Hiring, sign up for it. Just having the actual plugin is exactly that. You're looking at people's social footprint. A couple of months ago, you still had another tool, which I had as a backup, and LinkedIn bought the tool connected via social links. That's now kind of been sunset. So Amazing Hiring is one of the only tools that I'm kind of regularly using that will give me an overview of where people also have profiles, rather than just on LinkedIn or Twitter or GitHub, wherever I find them. So yeah, please do.
Well, yeah, the thing is that I mentioned Amazing Hiring not because it's the first question, so I need to mention it. It just I was talking about cross-reference, and when I'm using our plugin, there is an opportunity to follow, to find a candidate's link to their different profiles in the plugin. So, for example, if I'm on LinkedIn, and this is kind of very empty profile of a candidate, which only contains some very only necessary information about the tech stack, the company, and everything. And I just want to know more. So I just follow I just see in our plugin if this person has some more profiles, and then follow them. GitHub, Stack Overflow, Gravatar, no matter. I just want some more information. I crave for some more information. So first of all, it's cross-reference. Always check some additional sources to learn more about this person, because it's all right, actually. Just something to mention, it might be, I don't know, maybe you've seen that this person, again, is quite actively contributing into GitHub open source community, or maybe you're seeing that this person is following a very interesting project that you, and you have something in common with this person. And also, in case you couldn't find anything that might also sometimes happen. It's okay to send a moderately personalized email. You don't have to always, come up with something really creative, something really.
And sometimes I'm saying there's a question. There was a question later, which is like, is it okay to use humor and things like that? I mean, in those cases, sometimes just like don't have much to lose if you know that this person has a very sparse profile on LinkedIn, wherever it is you found them. Have some fun with it. Send them as like, look, I found you on LinkedIn, and as we both know, that doesn't say much, but I see this and that. I normally tell people why I'm reaching out to them. It's like, look, somehow the keyword that I'm looking for is on your profile. There's nothing else there, but at least that. So I really want to talk to you to get more about you. What I tend to stay away from people who have very little information, especially in the kind of developer field. You will find that a lot in social and like in cybersecurity, they won't have a lot of social footprint, at least not on the kind of open web. But for most developers, there'll be something like there's going to be some breadcrumbs, like they're going to have a website somewhere. They're going to have a presence somewhere. And they're like, whether you find that at Amazing Hiring or just Googling their name and finding like an old GeoCities blog or something like that. Like there's always, if you really want to, you can find information about pretty much everyone. Unless you got one of those couple of million fake profiles that LinkedIn has as well, then you're not going to find anything.
By the way, you can also, the humor thing was very good because you can just be, human and honest and tell that, I don't know much about you, so maybe we will, change that. Maybe you'll tell me more about your experience, about your professional background. Maybe there's a great point to start our conversation and dialogue. So I guess it will be absolutely all right with you.
And I think especially with the social footprint, like everybody goes like, oh, they look at them on LinkedIn, Amazing Hiring is running, and they find out like, oh, they have a GitHub, they have a Stack Overflow. That might tell you something about, they might be on GitHub, but with no repositories. They're on Stack Overflow, but there's no kind of questions or answers. It's like, so what do you do? I think that one of the things that people forget a lot is if there's a meetup, if there's a link to meetup, Amazing Hiring has it. It's mapped, but most people don't use it in that way. Like they will find people on Meetup and then, try to find them. The link isn't as good with Meetup, but that for me is one of the biggest treasure troves. Like you go to somebody's Meetup profile because they have the general Meetup profile, which is the one Amazing Hiring links to. It's going to tell you all the groups that they're in Meetup. And it tells you something about a person when you can see what group is she in Meetup. If she's in a JavaScript developers group in wherever city she's from, like that's something where she's actively gone in, signed up to Meetup in that group, and most likely have gone to one of those events after hours. So invested their own time in going there. And I think a lot of people forget that. I have no problem using that fact that I know that. I'm saying like, I saw that you're on Meetup in this group. For me, that tells me that you have an affinity for whatever that Meetup group is about, and using that fact, like as little fact as I have, I will use that in reaching out to people.
Yeah, that's a great example, really. So, and also I just wanted to remind that even a really perfect personalization doesn't guarantee that this candidate will, accept the role. But you would know that you did the best you could. So it's
especially if you're if you specialize like a lot of us do, like you recruit the same kind of people over and over again. If you do a bad job with a candidate, and we all know it's like a lot of the times there's nothing to do with how good your email is. It's like they get 100 emails a week. Some countries, they get that every day. You can be as good as you want. But if you do it well, they will get back to you. Like my wife and I have people getting back to us now that we reached out to 6 months ago, because obviously they weren't interested 6 months ago. With the current, climate, it's different things. So we can kind of see they're opening our emails, they're getting back to us now, they're interested in things like that. But also in 6 months and 12 months, you might have to reach out to that same candidate. If you didn't do a good job this time, and if you started getting, overly aggressive or things like that, then you're already in a bad light. So just kind of sometimes remember this, like, look, do it as best, but you're not always going to get an answer. But it doesn't mean that they're not reading your emails or whatever outreach you're using.
Yeah, that's right. And also, if you mention something, some personalization in your email, then your candidate, even if they don't reply to your first email and then your follow up, and even to your breakup email, which Mark hates, I believe. But then
I'll get into that. But yeah.
Really, in 6 months, for example, if they have a necessity to consider some different options, they might remember that there was a person who invested their time to learn more about them. So it's very important. You will just come up in their minds. You will bring about. So it's really important. You will just invest. Yeah.
Some people have the luxury that they can really research a lot. Like we had a discussion, I think, kind of 2.5, 3 years ago, with personalization, and then you came with the hyper personalization, and there's a lot of talk at conferences, and people in the recruitment industry is like, spending half an hour, on each email. And I love that. I've never been in a role where I had the luxury to do that. Because it's just, I don't like, I normally, we all have targets that we need to reach. A lot of the times it's about how many conversations you have per week, how many actually qualified candidates you have, and things like that. And if I spend, half an hour, on each email, and then well knowing that I might not get a response, so a lot of that could go nowhere, I didn't have that. But that being said, like, the so-called personalization that LinkedIn InMails is giving, it's not doing it for me. I'm happily off InMail for a long time. I just have that love-hate relationship, but mostly on the hate side. InMail can be good, and it's a good platform to kind of reach out to people on if you have that. But what I don't like about InMail is that, one, you don't really have control over if it arrives. You don't know if it gets open. You have no click through anything inside, and you're paying for it regardless. Like if they accept, you're going to get it back. I think every recruiter account has 150 InMails per recruiter seat, and you get them back if people accept. Sometimes they just accept, but they don't actually interested, and you don't have the functionality to be able to follow up as such. Like, then you use another InMail that is basically costing you money again. And so, like, that's what I hate. But the main thing for me is that I don't have any insight to, did they read my email? Did they open it? Did they click on my links? Nothing. So yeah, I've switched almost exclusively to channels that I control, and that is emails. And with GDPR coming and the whole world, going down the tubes in terms of that, and every company panicking, Amazing Hiring again kind of turned out to one of the only tools that we could comfortably use, because we could always trace back where the email came from. And I think somebody was asking about yesterday as well, what if we don't find a private email and we only get a company one, what do you do? I generally don't, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing business development, I have no problem doing company email, because it's, that I would rather send it to a company email. If I'm doing sourcing and candidate outreach, I'll try to do a private email. If I don't find anything else, I'll do a company one. And it's not really the big difference, because I wouldn't send anything to any email that I wouldn't be comfortable sending to a company email. You're not doing anything that is nefarious. If you don't want the company to see, they might not want the company to see that they're looking, but they're not looking because you reached out to them. It's a bit like recruiting in Germany. Everybody thinks it's impossible because of the laws there. It's like, it's not. You can still, I think what most people forget is what we're trying to do when we send that first cold communication to people. Like, everybody's like, we're trying to hire people. It's like, we're not. There's the only thing that cold outreach, the job of that is to get them to the next step. And the next step, for the most part of what I do, is to get them to talk to me. They could also be to talk to a recruiter, because I'm just doing the generation of the interest. So there's another thing I hate as well. Don't put a job spec in there. Don't over engineer what you're putting in there, because the only job of that outreach is to get them to the next step, which is most likely to talk to somebody in your organization. So keep it at that.
And you can always suggest switching into their personal email. You cannot expect, it's not, I mean, you can always mention that if you're interested, just email me with your personal email, because I believe that will be more convenient for you. And that's absolutely all right.
yeah, my call to action is always a calendar link, mainly because I've just found that I don't like doing email ping pong, especially with some countries and time zones. And like, I always get it wrong. So I end up suggesting the wrong times. So instead of doing that, saying, can you do Wednesday 10 or whatever? It's like, here's my calendar link. And my calendar is open from 10 in the morning to midnight. So pretty much any time zone I'm working in, there's something that they can find. And I love doing that. Like, I would set up an email campaign and then go out shopping, and I have notifications on my phone whenever people set up a meeting with me, and it's brilliant. I get pinged on my phone. It's automatically linked to my Zoom, so I know it's a video interview. Candidate gives me their email and their phone number, and that's it. I've never spoken to that person, but they've done all of the work, and they control it. They can cancel it themselves. They can reschedule it themselves. I like doing that. I've done this for many years, and we've done a lot of this email back and forth. Can you do this time or that time? So yeah, my call to action is always, here's my calendar, book some time with me. Plus I say, look, it's book a 15 minutes call with me. Again, that call is not to get them to buy into the whole experience and to interview with my CEO tomorrow. It's like, I just want to get to know you. Like, we take 15 minutes. If we want to continue talking, I still have a buffer. If not, then you've wasted 15 minutes only, or we can book another time to talk more. And that's the same approach I take with email. Keep it as short as possible without overloading with information. And yeah, I love what you said as well with like, look into what comes in the spam filters. Like, if you put opportunity anywhere, and spam filters is not just the subject line anymore. It's also the, first couple of lines. So if this says anything about opportunity, it's going to go into a spam filter, because that, like, every marketing email starts up with brilliant opportunity.
Maybe for free, urgent,
yeah, free.
Just now.
And there's a couple of tools out there as well that will tell you what your spam score is. So definitely, I'll try to find a few and maybe put it in the notes for this as well, because it is something you can check. If you run a lot of email campaigns, there is some paid tools out there that they will give you 4 to 10 Gmail, different email addresses that you'll put into your sequences. And they will give you a report, depending on what level you're at, on where those emails end up. So they will not just tell you whether they end up in spam, but they'll tell you which folder in Gmail they fall in, and if it goes into the, if it goes into the promotion tab, or it actually goes to the focused inbox. So those kind of things. So yeah, it's just a lot of tools that you can use to kind of, and I think every email provider has a course on email deliverability. I know Limlist had one that is really good. There's a lot of webinars around it as well. Mailshake, which I've used as well, has a lot about, how do you get delivered? Because like their main target, like their main audience is marketers that send out emails every day. Like they do more emails than we do.
Well, yeah, I also wanted to add that when you reach out to a person with their corporate email, I believe it's also important to mention why are you doing this? It's just important to say that I failed to find your personal email, so I have no better option to contact you with your corporate one. I believe I hope that's all right. So maybe so it's just important to mention it, so that the person would know that you tried. It's not like you just found this corporate email and decided to reach out. Yeah, it was your last resort. So
the email finder I have, that's all we had. So I just said it anyways. Like be human about like why am I using it, but also understand that some people might be uncomfortable with that. So you might get some flack for that. I don't think that's a question, but that's something that I wanted to that I had as a question from yesterday. What would be the structure of your email? You're talking about definitely having a call to action, but the rest of the kind of email, what would be your structure?
Well, first of all, you need to introduce yourself, because it's how you usually start your real conversation, right? And I know that you have your name in your signature, and still it's just polite to start with, hey, I'm Dana. And you don't need to say that I'm a recruiter, because it's obvious that you're a recruiter. Just say that I'm Dana, I'm from Amazing Hiring, or maybe.
And please don't say I found your email, I found your profile on LinkedIn, because that's what everybody else does as well. It's like, you can put that somewhere, but just don't start with that.
Yeah, so first of all, you introduce, then you can add some, you can explain what is your reason to reach out, why you're approaching this person in the first place. So is that did you have some very interesting project, and it happens and happened that you think that this person that you might fit to this position because you have some very valuable because you just satisfy some very valuable requirements and everything, it's all right. You can explain it, and also, of course, you need to tell about the project itself because it's the first thing they might be interested in. If you're allowed to disclose the salary, you can include it as well because I mean, it's one of the most important things for most of the people. It's even the first thing to be interested in. So. And of course, it's call to action. As I just said, you don't need to make your email too big because you can leave something for later to mention it in your follow-up email, which is vice, and you just don't want to overload your email because otherwise it will be it will be very difficult to read. So it should be readable. It should be some structure in it. You can use some bullet points, not to paste the requirements, but maybe to to describe the project, what products this project has. I don't know, it's always different. It's up to the project, so you can use them just to make it more readable. Think about the person who would read this email in the first place, and make sure that you did everything to make this email look readable and easy to understand, and just I don't know, just nice, polite, and kind.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have the same aspects, but I probably have a slightly different structure. I tend to not introduce myself because the email is my name and I have a signature, and I start off with explaining who I'm representing and especially the team. So I'm not going to be the one that's going to tell you how many funding rounds and whatever we have in the company. I want to talk about the team. What technology are they working with? What's sexy? What's the interesting thing about the specific team or the manager or whatever it is? Like why. It's the hook. You need that kind of hook. Why would I keep reading this email? The middle for me is about why am I reaching out to you? So very much about because you have experience based on my research in this and that aspect from these companies. I think that you would be a good fit. I don't mention salaries, and for one main reason, and that's based purely on experience. I tend not to put seniority level in my email, mainly because I've gotten it wrong so many times, and I've burned leads that are more senior than I thought they was, specifically because people don't update their profiles, and you don't, even though somebody's been on LinkedIn for 10 years, you don't, but they say like, it looks like they've just been a developer, whatever it is. But they haven't updated that they've been a manager for the last 5 years, or they're now where I tend to take away that kind of seniority level. So I generally just keep it because again, my goal with that email is to get them to talk to me. Yes, I might have a specific role in mind, but my conversation, again, is not about a specific role. It's about what would you be looking for if you were looking? And then I'll see if that's what we have now, or maybe that's something we'd have in the future. So my emails is the same thing. It's like, this is what we're working with. This is the team that we're working with. This is why you're interesting. I would love to have a conversation about career, not necessarily about a specific job. And that way we've gotten some very senior people that we didn't know were that senior, or that, that really were good, because it didn't come across from their social profiles. But once we started talking to them, it's like, this is spot on for a very senior role. And if I put salaries in, I would have burned them straight away. They would never have answered me. So yeah, I think that's just my experience from the companies and countries I worked in.
Well, that's a very interesting discussable point. I mean, what is interesting, candidate engagement is a very, very personal thing. I mean, everyone has their own strategy, and it might work for some time, and then it just and then you just realize that you need to change it a bit, and it's absolutely all right. So, well, the salary is it's a tricky question. I mean, sometimes I think that this is the thing which most candidates, the majority of candidates, are most interested in, and you just want to tell them what they're starting to hear from you. So maybe it's just fair tell them in the beginning? Why waiting for the breakup email? Because I've just read that
it might be because as well that we all know that it's like if you have the really good candidates, those salaries that you get from your companies are all relative. It's like, well, if we find that perfect, then we can be flexible. And I've had a lot of hires that officially were out of bounds in terms of what they're actually looking for, but what they brought to the table was not, was also way above what they were looking for. So we ended up getting approval for the kind of salary they were looking for. But I know I wouldn't have had those conversations if I'd said up front that we're looking for, whatever level it is. And I even get it wrong now. Like if I'm too general, I get people's like, I'm a manager, so I'll only go for manager roles. I was like, that's fine. I have those as well. So I would love to have a conversation, but because I didn't put manager in the kind of bulk of my email. So yeah, but again, it very much depends.
No, I totally agree about the seniority level, because I think the problem is that it's absolutely true. Not all LinkedIn profiles are updated timely, so it's just there are very high chances that you might be mistaken. But I think if you decide, if you prefer to mention the salary, you can always add that this is discussable. We can discuss it. We can have a call and then discuss it. It's just the range which we consider right now. So it's always up to your proficiency in your background. So let's just discuss it.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to reconsider this range, because we totally understand that you have your conditions, your current conditions, and let's just discuss. Maybe we can have something more interesting to offer.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I do is relocation. So there's a lot of kind of factors that goes into it. And you end up talking about, it's difficult to kind of, because taxation is different and it's a relocation and it's more of a lifestyle thing. Like you get to a different discussion. So
you also when you source for people for your prospects, then you know that some number of candidates, especially if you're trying to fill in some really high senior position in the beginning, so you know that probably some of the people would have kids. So maybe they would have some different points to be more interested in, and it's not more about the salary, but about the health insurance and everything for extended health insurance for the whole family, for the kids and everything. So you just need to dive a bit deeper into.
Which is exactly why I tend not to put it in, because I know it's important, but just as somebody who's relocated 8 times in the last 15 years. It's not always the most important thing. Like I've moved from one country and went down substantially in salary for a specific reason, for the right company, for the right kind of opportunity. So it always depends. So it's like commute, family, cost of living, like it's different things. Like the country you're in is not safe. Like there's all kinds of things that you kind of need to look at. We had a lot of people leaving the UK when the Brexit happens, just because, one person might have a good job, but the family wasn't secure. The husband couldn't find a job, or the wife didn't have, and they were, they didn't want their family to kind of live in insecurity. So you have a lot of that, which is that's the kind of conversation I want to have, because then I know like the salary is important, but it's not always top of the discussion. And because I tend to represent a lot of companies that do relocations, it's about having that discussion of what it all entails and, what's there for the family and how are schools and what's the work-life balance and things like that.
Oh yeah, I just thought that maybe this advice is more relevant for first of all in-house recruiters who don't have, more some different roles to fill in, and they know that they can rely on the employer branding. And also, if you just know that the salary you're offering is higher than average, then it might be something to mention, just because it's your selling point. So if it's a bit lower than average because of some bonus or compensation or some other points, of course you won't be mentioning it, because it just it's not really wise. So if it's higher than average, so why not? It's your selling point. You have a right to mention it, because sometimes people who are satisfied with their job, you might get a message. It's just some real cases I had with my fellow developers, recruiters. Friends and acquaintances. So when they get a message and they see quite high numbers about the salary, it just makes you more interested, at least to learn more about it, to hear what is it really. It's interesting. So just tell me about it. It's your hook anyway. Why not?
Absolutely. And one of the questions that was yesterday as well was if you would use local language in the outreach. I know what I've kind of done, but yeah, like you answered it a bit yesterday. I would love to go more into depth with that.
Sure. Well, it's a very interesting and discussable question, I think, because I believe in many companies, the working language is English. So that makes sense to ask such a question. And I think I would rather ask a recruiter what are the circumstances? Are candidates you're approaching speaking the same language as you do, or I'd like to have a bit more detailed context, I would say.
It depends in every country. So personal experience, I've recruited in most languages and most countries of the world. I'm happy to speak a couple of languages so I can get away with doing like local language for a lot, but I've also used Google Translate or used a colleague to translate into French. And the reason I do that, and it's specifically coming from Germany, where I kind of know is like, yes, they all speak English, especially with the kind of IT people that we're, but if your first message is in English, they will answer you, but not the same day. It's generally like, even if they're interested, they're like, I'll go home, I'll look at it in the weekend, and then I'll make sure that I'm going to craft the right, because English is not the first language, or it's not a language they use if they don't use English daily. So even developers in Germany, a lot of them will work in German with colleagues in German. So actually writing in German, writing in English and answer you, and the same in kind of French, it's going to take a bit longer. And again, my job is to get them to talk to me. It's like, I don't care what your written English is. I want to talk to you. And if I speak that language, I'll talk to you in that language as well. I just might have to check your English. So I've translated my outreach emails to Russian. I've done it in Swedish. I've done it in French. And then like the languages that I do speak, I would use local language when as much as possible. I had the same discussion with Jan Tixe about the Czech Republic, where it's like, even though they will all speak English, you're still going to get a better response if you do it local language. And in my, if I translate, one of the last things, look, my French is non-existent, but I wanted to reach out to you and to make it as easy for you to respond to me as possible and just be honest about that. And that, with a bit of humor, has gotten me a long way with a lot better response rate than using just English to friends.
Well, I'm just thinking, if I'm approaching someone in Russia, for example, and I'm Russian, which might not be really obvious, but anyway, I am. So if I'd like to reach out to someone who is also Russian, so I would use my mother tongue for sure, just because, well, it's your mother tongue. You can make a better jokes when you use your mother tongue. So in this case, just use the language which you both know better, and then just say that the working language is English. How are you about it? But if you know that your candidate is speaking some different language you don't know at all, like for example Chinese, well, I wouldn't dare to use translator to.
Oh no, I would again, no language I would trust in Google Translate or Yandex. Yeah. Depending on what language it is, you're probably better off with Yandex Translate for some of them. I would, even languages I speak, I still use Google Translate because I don't speak them daily. And then knowing it's wrong, I would always get it checked by somebody I know is native that language, especially if I use it as an outreach email, because it's like, if it's bad, you sound like, if you sound like a Nigerian prince sending spam emails, you're not going to get a response rate either. So
yeah, well, you can always, but you can always greet a person in their mother tongue, because that's something that's the least you can do. At least say hello in their language, and then say maybe a few more words, and then they say that I translated it, so I really tried, and it even sounded really nice to me. So maybe you'll tell me how to say it correctly or something like that. So it's definitely not trying to write your email in the language you do not know at all.
It comes back to the kind of how much you know about this person. It's like, look, if all you know is that this person is Russian, that gives you something you can use to personalize your outreach. Whether that's a Russian person in Russia or it's a Russian person working in Europe and the US, just you've done that research and seen where they went to university or where they're actually from originally. Like, that comes back to that. If I can't find much about a person, that could be that personalization thing.
It's especially very nice and cute when you're seeing that a person's name is English, but the letter starts with some Russian words in it, which means that the person tried. And I always open those letters with some appreciation that the person really spent some time. So maybe this might be a very good way to start your dialogue with the person.
Yeah. One of the questions that was high on the list yesterday as well, like, how do we stay up to date with IT technology?
This is a great question. I just didn't notice it yesterday. So
I think there's two issues to that. Like, if you don't know much about IT technology, how do you kind of learn? And I think another way, because like, how do you stay up to date with what's development? What the tool that I use for things that I don't know about, because I am not technically, other than like actually talking to developers every day, is to use the technology. Oh, now I forgot what it's called. Andre from blank. It's a plugin and it's a website. Glossary Tech. There it is.
Yeah. I thought
because it's brilliant. It's like, it's not just, we all have that where we're trying to sound reasonably. Or you're looking at CVs and you're like, you've never heard of that. Look it up, find out whether it's a framework within something, and that's just going to get you lots of rabbit holes to kind of like, oh, if that's a framework, maybe I can use for that another framework as well. Amazing Hiring does a lot of that kind of work for you. Of you search for Java, they're going to search for everything else that falls in under that. But if you actually click on the three dots that on Amazing Hiring when you do search and you want to know what other synonyms they've looked for, start looking those up. And it's like, is that actually what I'm looking for as well? So that would be my recommendation, to actually go in and use Glossary Tech, either the plugin to just help you when you're reading things, but also the actual site and going into that. How to learn, I don't know what you kind of have experience like learning IT technology or the terminology around it, if like how to stay up to date with that.
Yeah, I wanted to say that Glossary Tech is really wonderful. When you get your project, you see the tag and you realize that there are some words you literally don't understand, what they mean. So you just go to Google and start Googling it, because it's the first step. And then you just start reading articles, watch some webinars. But to me, the best way to learn something about some field is to speak with those people who are working with it. For example, if you're an in-house recruiter, then you're very lucky to speak to those people, to your hiring team, because it's an excellent opportunity to learn more about the tech itself, to learn more about the perfect candidate, because they will tell you it. They will tell you in some very simple words, because usually, at least it's my experience, usually developers can explain their tech in very simple words, much simpler than you would find it on the web, just because they understand it to the tips of their fingers, and they can make you understand at least the general idea. So it's a brilliant idea to speak to those people. But if you are, for example, an agency recruiter, then you can you have your network anyway. Those people who have rejected your offer in the past, those people who, I'm sure you have lots of people in your network on LinkedIn. So yeah, you can just stay friends with them and then learn more, because it's just really interesting, because those people who are working in tech, they're brilliant. They're really amazing, very smart. And it just, if you're a tech recruiter, then I'm pretty sure that you're interested in the technology. So just stay in line with them and speak with them. Yeah.
I think I have 4 kind of things that I would say. It's like, one, if you're one of the sources like me that actually talk to candidates, ask them, both my wife and I do that a lot. We tend to end up in projects with technologies we haven't recruited for before. Just being honest with people, it's like, look, I want to talk, the tech stack with you, but can you explain to me, what you do? That's what is it actually? Explain it to me like I don't understand, because I don't. Just being honest, it's like I always tell people, it's like, look, I understand, like I'm technical enough to understand which goes where, but I'm not technical. Like I'm not a developer and I don't play one on TV. So if you could explain to me what you do and kind of, that's going to help. The more conversation you have like that with different candidates, at some point you're gonna sound like you know what you're talking about. I always say, like, if they sound like they know less than me, then they're definitely not good for the job. Another one is if you're an agency or you're not with the team, podcasts is a brilliant way that I found. Pretty much any technical topic has a podcast, which digs down, like they have a weekly thing, what's happening in this. Every kind of major programming language has their own podcast and their own following. So definitely like look into that. And there's some really good ones that just explain to you what's happening, what's the new release and things like that. YouTube, don't forget YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. Use it as such. If you're looking for technology you don't know, you've been to Glossary Tech, you kind of understand a bit, but not really, go to YouTube. There's so many tutorials, so many people who are like, let me break this down to you for somebody who doesn't understand it, what it actually is. You can double speed a YouTube video. So even if it's a 10-hour, whatever tutorial, do it on double speed, you'll get some of it. So definitely use that. And meetups, use meetups. If you don't have a team, use meetups to go to them, online webinars, whatever you can to kind of follow what's going on. Like if you're like, I used to do a lot of Java, so I'm signed up for the Java newsletter from Oracle. I know what the new release is, things like that. So there's loads of resources to actually stay up to date in your kind of niche, if you're niche down in the specific languages.
Exactly, that's totally true. And also, I just thought, in my experience, most of the developers I know, they are very inspired people. They love their job very much because it's pretty difficult. If you don't love it, it's very difficult to do it. So the thing is that they love to talk. They love to discuss those things. So every time I go to them and ask, hey, could you please tell me a bit more about this? They're always eager to tell me more about this. And sometimes it's just, hey, an hour was really great. This was a very, very long session, very informative. So thank you very much. So it's all right to ask them. They, I don't know, sure there would be people who
they're invested in it as well, because at the end of the day, most of the time they're looking for people that they're going to be pairing with. You're looking for their team members. Like if you get it wrong, it infects them. So they will want to help you. Like they don't want to waste their time doing technical interviews because you got it for somebody that's no good because you got it wrong. So they'd rather spend that time up front to make you, but it's all about asking. It's all about actually asking them, do you have an hour? Like, this is boggling me. I found this community. I'm not quite sure. Can we just go through that? And I know they will love to help you on that.
Exactly. And I also love the point that you mentioned about not trying to mimic, to imitate, to try to pretend that you understand everything, because it's very obvious and no one expects that you will understand everything, because they know that you're not a developer. So it's all right to say that there is something which is beyond your it's something that you don't understand. It's right, because we're all human beings, and again, no one expects that you will understand it. So it will be all right if you will just understand the basics. Basic is very important, because otherwise it will be difficult to speak with you anyway.
Yeah. I want to go back. We had a bit of a discussion before we went live. I want to kind of finish off on that. We talked about breakup email mainly because I hate them. I get them a lot myself and I see them a lot. And I think my main hate with them is that everybody kind of reads on some marketing website that you should use them, but they take the template that they got from Yesware or whoever. And so if I see one more breakup email with like 0.3 is that you got chased by a dinosaur and you didn't have time to, like, if it's genuine, then it's fine. And it's like, it's also, for me, it's a bit about when do you send the breakup email? I think the most important, for me, the kind of thing that wasn't as clear to me yesterday is, and what I do a lot, one, I use a lot of video, which I know I can talk for days about using video and outreach. It's that kind of personalization, but through actually planning out a sequence with different channels. So not just sending 4 emails and a breakup email, because more and more research kind of shows that the number of touch points you need, especially from a cold audience, the number of times you need to touch that audience for them to really get to the different faces of who you are. Or they might not know your company. They definitely don't know you. So how are they going to get to a point where they want to speak to you about a big decision like a job? So plan out, what are you going to do in between the emails? A lot of what I do and what I use Amazing Hiring for is to have those different channels. So it's like you send the first email. You might connect with that person on LinkedIn if you think that's relevant. You might like something on Twitter, follow them on Twitter, follow them on, whatever that is, the kind of different social networks. GitHub is brilliant because you can start a project. You can follow them on GitHub. Anything that you kind of know that you are likely to trigger some kind of thing that they're going to see you, retweeting an article, liking a post on LinkedIn, whatever it kind of is that you can do in between sending the emails, so that you have different touch points and different channels without just sending them the follow-up emails all the time. It's proven from me that it's a much better response. Something as simple as just actually looking at their LinkedIn profile when you send them an email, so that, if they're as, much on LinkedIn as all the recruiters, so they can see that you watched their email at their LinkedIn profile.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you very much, Mark, for covering this point. Because when I said multi-channel approach, I believe it's how I wanted to say all the same, just in 2 words. Yeah, that's definitely a very important strategy. Once you've sent your initial first email and then you see that there's no reply for several days, then you just go to LinkedIn, because it's the easiest way how to initialize. How to ring about. So the thing is that, as I just said to Mark again before we decided to go live. So the thing is that most of the recruiters, or at least half of them, do not really have that much time and maybe experience, maybe just resources, maybe expertise and everything to use videos on such a scale as you do, which is already just different levels of communication, different levels of candidate engagement. So those who have to send bulk emails, who have to reach out to hundreds of people, just because this is their routine, this is their KPIs, this is something that is tracked by their hiring managers. Then and you just know that time is precious, and you have just 2 hours to source, and then to learn more about them, to reach out to them, to schedule your follow-ups, and then to make sure that everything was launched. And then this is everything is just within this 2 hours. It's just very.
I think even if people actually did schedule follow-ups, that would be a big. I know, and that this is both sales, marketing, and recruitment. Most people do not do follow-ups. They will do a list of 100 and send 100 emails or in-mails. Next week, they get 20% response. They're happy. But response meaning just any response, like 19% of those could be no thank you, not interested. I don't track response. I only track positive response, which is people who actually schedule a call with me. And then you still have 80 people left on that list. What 99.9% of the recruiters do is that they go back and do a new list of 100. They don't go back to the 80. But if you went back to the 80 and did a follow-up, or what I train a lot on is like, plan from the beginning what your follow-up sequence will be. If you're looking at that person on Amazing Hiring to begin with, you already have their different social profiles. So when I put people in projects, it's like, okay, I know I have their email and I know where it's found. What would be my follow-up ones? Like, they're on Twitter. So, okay, I'm going to follow them on Twitter as the second one. Then I'm going to, okay, this is their LinkedIn. And it looks like they're fairly, active on there. I'm going to connect with them on LinkedIn, maybe like one of their, things or something like that. And actually, like, between my emails, like, I know I set my sequence. It's like 5 days after, if they haven't clicked or responded, send them this email. But for me, the knowing is like, okay, I send out emails on Monday. I'm going to send out emails on Thursday again. In between that, I need to do, maybe Tuesday, I, do something on Twitter. Wednesday, I do something on LinkedIn, so that I know that I'm constantly staying on top of their mind if they actually see it. but I'm not just sending them a new email every day. But I think for most people, if they just started actually following up on that first communication, that would be a huge increase in response.
Yeah, I believe it's a first level.
Yeah.
Like first you just start following up, and then you just start realizing that you might do it better. You can do more. First of all, go to some other platforms and remind of yourself on those platforms. So yeah, it just different steps of this strategy, let's say. Oh yeah, that was great. I mean, how you schedule your follow-ups and how do you plan all your steps? It's a very great.
And you're already there. Like if you're looking at somebody's amazing hiring profile, you have all of their social footprint, like all their networks there. So it's just for you to like, okay, like I have an Excel sheet where I'm like, okay, this person, it's all about when you export people from amazing hiring, if you export them, it's like, what are the columns that I'm doing? So that I would always do like, if they have a Twitter, give me that. If there's LinkedIn, give me that. So that I know it's like, okay, these are the most likely follow-up channels that I will have if I schedule the follow-up with them. Perfect. We're coming up on the hour. Dana, if people want to, stay in touch with you, see what you're doing, how do they best do that from here on?
Well, first of all, I think you can reach out to me like everywhere, LinkedIn, my email, my Instagram, but there are more pictures of my cat rather than myself, and still maybe you're cat lovers as well. So yeah, first of all, I believe it's I'm more often check my inbox rather than LinkedIn, just because inbox is the place where everything it's just everything. So yeah, maybe I'm one of those people, one of those candidates who are living in their inbox literally. So this is where you can always find me. And if you have anything to share with me, maybe to discuss, maybe I can be of any help to you regarding our tool, regarding our expertise. Maybe we have other services as well besides our product, which is sourcing on demand and everything. So just check out our website, go to LinkedIn. You have my email address, I believe, on the presentation.
If not, you should be able to find it relatively easily. You are sources after all.
Exactly. So, Mark, thank you very much. It was a
huge
pleasure to speak with you.
Yeah, and for everybody who's watching this before Thursday, tomorrow we have Balázs and Julia going through building a sourcing function. If you don't know Balázs, definitely check him up. He's built sourcing functions for Randstad SourceRight. In Budapest, he's worked for Cielo late. So he's one of the authorities on actually building sourcing teams. I've been lucky to work with somebody that he was consulting about building a sourcing team to kind of take it from the building it up to taking it to the next step. So I know his kind of processes, and it's definitely somebody you should listen to. Julia has a lot of experience working with different clients from Amazing Hiring on the same thing. So definitely listen to that tomorrow. We'll be back again on Monday, following up any questions that we don't have time to cover tomorrow that we can cover with Julia and with Balázs there. So yeah, see you on Monday, and thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.